Imagine living long enough to see the world change not once, but a dozen times over, and still waking up each morning with curiosity, purpose, and creativity. Welcome to the Aging Well podcast, where we explore the science, stories, and strategies behind living a longer, healthier, and more purposeful life. I am your host, Dr. Jeff Armstrong, an exercise physiologist with a passion for making science simple and life better as we age. My guest is Merilyn Simonds, the award-winning author of 20 books, including her latest, Walking with Beth, a moving collection of intimate conversations with her friend Beth Robinson, now 104 years old. Over 3 years of weekly walks and talks, Merilyn captured Beth's reflections on friendship, health, creativity, and the art of staying relevant in a changing world. This conversation will inspire you to reimagine what's possible for your own later years and remind you that a meaningful life is more than just living longer. It's about living fully. This conversation will help you reconnect with your body's innate intelligence and the path to aging well. Merilyn, welcome to the Aging Well podcast. Before we start getting into Walking with Beth, can you share a little bit about yourself and how you first met Beth Robinson and what drew you to her as a friend and a conversation partner?
Well, I'm a writer. I should go back and count, but I think this is my 22nd book, maybe 20. So I've been publishing since I was, 29 years old, so 46 years. And I live in Kingston, Ontario, which is a very lively literary community. Probably real estate is fairly cheap, but there's lots of writers and artists who live here. And I think Beth and I kind of circled around each other for years. I feel like we tried to figure out when we met and weren't able to. We kind of narrowed it to a 6-year window sometime in the late 90s. I helped her with her first book that was published, I think, even 5. And then she published another one and so how we reconnected. So we'd always known each other and we used to email back and forth. And I would always send her images from Mexico, where I live half the year, because she loves color and Canada's a bit bleak in the winter. So I've never cared much about birthdays, but when my 70th rolled around, it felt different. I felt like I was entering a different stage of life. And so I thought, well, who can I talk about this? And I called up Beth and I said, walk. And she said, well, it's COVID, we really have to be outside and we have to wear. So we went for that first walk and the rest is history.
Wow. And you've written across many genres, as you mentioned. Would you say 27 books? I'm impressed. I'm jealous. So you've written memoirs, biographies, and fiction, nonfiction. How did you approach this book differently than you did your past work?
I think in many ways it was the same as all my books. I don't plan my books. I don't say, because this is what the market needs right now. No, I'm not that kind of writer. I follow my curiosity. And sometimes the material ends up as most often it does, because I haven't learned an awful lot in these 40 years of writing and publishing, except to follow my gut. I mean, what I love about writing is that every project takes you right back to being a 5-year-old. You don't know anything about it. You don't know anything about its world. And you have to learn it all. And I love that. So with Beth, we just started walking. It was just, a walk on a Wednesday afternoon. And when the walk was over, she said, let's do it again next Wednesday and next Wednesday and next Wednesday. And so we started Wednesday at 3 was our time. And we walked a lot. We shared books, talked about everything under the sun. And, much of it within the frame of growing older and what to do with those latter decades. And then, at a certain point, the material reached a tipping point and we said, I think this could be a book. And we were both really thrilled with that, because for me, I wanted other people, she's just a remarkable human. And for Beth, she was a lifelong art therapist and occupational therapist, but mostly art therapist. She has a lot of very passionate views on the value of art in life. She was hoping to convey that. Between the two of us, we figured.
Yeah, and you do.
Yeah.
And her story is just remarkable. I mean, you say, yeah, there you go. Our listeners can't see that, but they'll see it in the, I guess in the thumbnail we'll show it. So, and they can also go on Amazon or wherever they get their books and buy it. We'll talk more about that later. But she was working until what, 97? I think
until 99. She was an art therapist with. She was an art therapist with PTSD families in the Army base.
And she was driving to, I think it was like 103, still making art. And she's 105 now. Is that correct?
105, and she still lives in her own home without assistance. And she still walks every day. She came to the book launch on Sunday afternoon. It was just so, the whole room was in tears. And at the end, she came up on stage, the entire room, a huge air hug. It was amazing. She still dresses better and has better posture than anybody I know.
So from your perspective, what personal qualities have contributed to her longevity and that vitality?
Personal qualities. Well, I think first of all, you have to have the good genes. A tremendous amount of longevity rests in genetic make, how long your parents, your and she came from a family with pretty good genes. But she also, at the age of 40, her digestion wasn't working well. She didn't feel well, and she became a vegetarian. So she's been vegetarian for 65 years. She doesn't drink, she doesn't smoke, she eats extremely well. She's careful about what she eats. She's not rigid, but she is very careful she's careful to exercise every day. Both strengthening exercises, and she reads prodigiously. She's very engaged, and she's, I don't know anyone else. Well, I don't know anyone else that age at all, but I don't know any older people who have what she has, which is an interest in the here and now. She's not the person who is always reflecting back to how things used to be and how it was better than it is now and all of that. She doesn't live in the past, and she sees the past very clear for what it was. There are things she misses about the past, but she's also very, you could talk to her about Ukraine and about Trump and about, any election or any social issue that it has raised its head. And she'll be completely up to date. Even in her language, she speaks with contemporary vernacular. So, and there's one more thing that I think is interesting about her. So I'm Wednesdays at 3, but there's somebody Friday at 4 and Saturday at 12:30 and Sunday at 1:30, and like all through the week she has this amazing mixture of friends who some come to visit. Mostly they telephone. She's losing energy. Who wouldn't at 105? But yeah, she has all these people she talks. So it's like she has all these tentacles out into. She's always aware of what's going on, and is perpetually excited, about things that are going on with her friends.
She seems like the picture of aging well.
Well, I do think so. I guess there's one other thing that I didn't mention, and that is that maybe it's her therapeutic background, but she doesn't allow herself to get trapped in, the organ recital, like, what's aching now? Because, when you, as you get older, managing physical conditions is a fairly, time consuming part of your life. And she has her fair share, but she doesn't let herself dwell on that. And her dining room table is this amazing, it's a huge table. It was her grandparents' table. And on the table are paper, twigs, stones, stamps, anything you can imagine. And her chair is set there, and every day she'll pass the table and she'll sit down and she'll just start working with varied materials to create collages. She's at the moment obsessed by stamp paintings. So she takes stamps and arranges them by color and then, makes a painting with them. And if you go to my website, MerilynSimonds.com, you only spell everything correctly. And on the homepage, the picture of the cover of this book. And if you click on that, you go to the Walking With, and there are some pictures of her stamp painting.
She just seems so amazing. And you mentioned her genetics, but Her upbringing as well. How did that? She was the daughter of a literary editor. She was a niece of a suffragette. How do you think that shaped her outlook on aging?
Well, I think it probably had a pretty big influence. Her father was not just a literary editor; he was the literary editor in Canada who promoted Canadian writers and Canadian illustrators. Like the inside covers and the insides of books were all done by a group of 7 painters, like really famous in the early years. And he was the first to say Canadian children need to be reading Canadian books in the schools. And at the time, I mean, it's hard for us to realize that, for instance, one year in the early 50s, there were something like 13 Canadian novels published and 1,500 British novels imported. So, I mean, our culture was really dominated by Britain in much the same way that it's completely dominated by the United States now. But he was pivotal in bringing Canadian writers into and he was always saying to Beth, paddle your own canoe. And he was a real aficionado of art. So their house was filled with the art of some very famous painters. And he would invite his writers and artists home for lunch. And so this big table that is now her art table, they would, he'd have a dozen writers sitting around there, and she would be part of that, when she was younger, sitting up on the stairs or under the table, but later joining the lunch crowd. So I think that would have had a huge impact on her development of her passion, which is literature. And she believes that everybody needs a passion, that so many people, they have a job and they work very hard and become very good at their job, but then they retire. And often they have nothing, and they feel completely bereft because they don't feel needed and they don't feel interested or curious. And so she really believes that is an excellent opportunity to develop some passion, often something you had in childhood, before you had to become part of the working world. And that, it doesn't matter what it is, I mean, it can be rug hooking, it can be, collecting any, ink bottles, it could be anything. But what is, and so I think, and her mother was one of the first collectors of early Canadian. So that collecting passion and that necessity for doing for yourself and not waiting for other people to do it, together with her Aunt Alice, who was one of the first suffragettes. Alice Chown took Beth's mother to England for the huge suffragette march in London. So I think those 3 people shaped her really, really strongly towards the arts, towards following your own passions and being a principal. And all 3 of those things are landmarks.
If you're enjoying the Aging Well podcast, be sure to like, subscribe, or follow on your favorite platform so you will never miss an episode. And if you find our conversations helpful, please share the podcast with a friend, because aging is something we're all doing and we're better at doing it together. And support our guests in this podcast financially by visiting the affiliate links in the episode description below, and use the links or codes provided for discounts on products we have vetted and feel comfortable recommending to our valued viewers and listeners. Thank you, and now back to the podcast. I teach in my physiology of exercise class. I always bring up a quote. I misquote it, and I'm trying to correct the misquoting. If you want to win an Olympic gold medal, choose your parents very carefully. And I always say, if you want to be an Olympic athlete, choose your parents wisely, which is a little bit easier to say.
Yeah.
But the reason I underscore that for my students, it's a part genetics, so you're going to get those genes from your family. Much more so, it's the environment, it's the opportunities that they bring to you. And you're underscoring that perfectly, that, okay, yeah, she might have gotten some great, little genes on her DNA that give her a greater likelihood to live longer. But that vitality, that willingness to live with purpose doesn't come from your genes. It comes from the experiences in life, the opportunities we're given. And that's why I believe we can't clone ourselves, because we have too much experience.
Well, and it's that combination of nature and nurture, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't do anything about the nature part, but nurture is in your hands. And if you are hanging out with people who are negative and complainers and, recluses, that's not going to be healthy for you. She talks a lot in the book about, because I didn't grow up in that kind of a family. And there were 4 daughters, and my father was kind of rigid, and we grew up being people pleasers, right? And so I've learned a lot from her about, if somebody says something, pause, and you let your life experience rise up to the top and help you decide what to do. If somebody says, let's go for a walk, you can say, no, that's not right for me right now. Or, right. So she's a great believer in how your own life can work to your benefit in help you make and good decisions. Boy, oh boy, the older you get, the more important those good decisions are. Like, right? Do not fall. Look after your teeth.
So true. And I'm really curious, there's no way to quantify it, but I'd be curious, how many years to your life has she added in those years that you have interacted with her? And I would have to say, without a doubt, she's probably added to, whether it's a year, 2 years, 10 years, 20 years, she's added to your life just from that interaction because of the lessons you've learned and the shift in your own perspective of aging. Would you agree with that?
I think to some extent. I mean, Beth and I are friends because we're we're both very much glass half full people. We're not glass half empty. And, anybody who reads the book, they'll see that through the 3 years that the book covers, sees to the point where Beth was driving over and picking me up and taking me out for a picnic instead of, it felt pretty weird. Her being 30 years older than I am. But I think regardless of how long I live, I would say that she has greatly.
And I should have added that as well.
Yeah, I mean, none of us know when we're going to, exit, right? We don't. We might get hit by a bus. We might, I don't know, stub our toe and get an infection that goes to our heart and we're done. You just don't know. And so I don't think the goal is to live to 105. The goal is to live really well every day of that life and to not let anything prevent you from finding joy. I mean, there's joy in everything.
Yeah. And I think, if we can look at biological, chronological age, and we can add more numbers, more birthdays. But again, the goal is really to add more life to that life,
That's exactly right. Yeah.
If I have 10 more years to live and 10 of those are sick, they're not great years. But if I can live 8 to 9 years, even 10 years of vitality, then it's been well worth it.
Well, yeah. And we all hope for vitality, but boy, oh boy, I lost my sight. I couldn't walk. I lost my mind. I lost just about everything. But I didn't lose and I think, nothing can take your attitude away. And I know a lot of people who are desperately ill and yet, they still find happiness, in their relationships or in the natural world or, who knows where you find your, I'm a girl. Beth is a very, very social person. She finds happiness in her teapot and the people that are gathered around it. So I don't think, what am I trying to say? I do think that we can shape our experiences, shape us, but we can also shape our experiences so that they are beneficial instead of a burden.
So you're a writer, so you deal with words, right? That's what writers do. So maybe you can help me with a quest that I'm on. I am tasked with trying to change the spelling of gratitude to have 2 T's in the middle. So it's an attitude of gratitude instead of just gratitude.
Well, good luck with that.
Yeah, I'm working on it, but to get people thinking that it's.
But I think that's just a great point to make, right? Is that Beth says her parents belonged to a gratitude society, just the 2 of them, and she grew up within that. They were so grateful for their lives, and her mother died quite young. And Beth now is suffused with gratitude, and I feel the same way. And I think gratitude, being grateful, being for the world, for the taste of a chocolate bar, for the feel of the rain, they can be such simple things, and it doesn't matter how reduced you are physically. There are still endless to be grateful.
So the book explores everything from women's friendships to creativity, resilience, and relevance. Which of these themes surprised you the most in your conversations with Beth?
I think the two of us did really take a very intense look at, and I think I have always taken a bit for granted. You know, have a friend, it's somebody that you feel compatible with. Friends come and go. You know, some last a lifetime. I'm still friends with high school. You know, that we've been friends for 60 years, 63 years. But I had never really examined the notion of friendship and how female friendships among men, and I think they are quite. So that opened me, because I think the book is largely about friends and intergenerational friendships, which has always been part of my life. I've always loved old ladies. And I'm thrilled that I'm still, even though I'm an old lady now, I can still find somebody older than I am.
Yeah, you're not old. I don't like the whole word old. It's
No, I don't either. I if I use anything like that, I say older, because we're all older than somebody else. And Beth speaks very carefully. She always says someone of my vintage, which I love. That's because vintage, I don't know, projects a kind of quality as well as quantity.
That is so true. And maybe we'll have to start using that word a lot more on here. We actually did an episode where we talked about just how offensive some of the terminology is for people that we use to regard to old people. I'll ask my students, it's like, how do you define an older person? And they get uncomfortable because they know I'm 62. They're like, oh, 65?
That's so funny. And when I gave the first talk I gave on the book was on, and today is the official publication date of a nice way to celebrate it with you.
Yeah.
But at that event, I did talk a bit about ageism and how we still look at old people the way we used to refer to women and refer to people of color. That's how we refer to old people, without thinking of them as lesser because of what they are and not thinking of who they are. And I think that was one of the comments that got a very strong reaction from the audience. I mean, they were really agreeing with that. And I think I was talking about a friend of mine who just turned 75 and who finds that her internal dialogue says, she finds herself saying to herself, well, don't do that. You're 75. And what do you expect? You're 75, right? And which is craziness, right? The world does that to us. Our doctors say, wow, what can you expect? You're 75, right? And our kids say that. But we don't have to say, we can have a different.
We won't say that on this podcast for sure. I mean, I get so annoyed, being an exercise physiologist, and you kind of go on social media or on YouTube and these things, and you see all these videos, exercises you shouldn't be doing over the age of 50. It's like, who are you to tell me what I can or cannot do over the age of 50? Nothing changes because I'm 50. The basic principles, physiologically, psychologically, all that are the same no matter what our age is. Yeah. And so it's just, what are we capable of doing? And don't tell us that we're not capable of doing something just because we've hit a certain calendar year.
No, and I mean, I talk about this in the book, but Beth, in the office of Beth's doctor, there's a chart of the tests that you can expect in age. It ends at 85. So she said, obviously, I'm in perfect health.
There you go. Yeah, that blows me away as well. And we talk in my classes about, the normative data. And it struck me like last year I put up a graph that has the normative data for bench press.
Yes.
And if I'm 20 years old, if I can bench my body weight, I'm in fair condition. But now in my 60s, if I can bench my body weight, which I still can with some pain, I'm almost superhuman. And it's like, that's ridiculous. Because you can't tell me that I'm gotten that strong.
They're not doing the studies. They're not doing large studies. I think there are studies of people in retirement homes and that sort of thing. But in Ontario, and I guess it would be helpful if I had the population total for Ontario, which I don't. But at this moment in Ontario, there are 4,000, and 1,400 of those are still living they're like Beth. They're still living in their own homes without assistance. That's 1,400 people. I mean, you could do a study of those, right? That's enough of a sample. And by the time, 30 years from now, when I turn 100, 25, I guess it is now, when I turn 100, there will be 40,000 of us. So, we better wake up and start doing this research.
I attended a webinar yesterday on gerotherapeutics, and they opened it up, you could ask questions. So I typed in a question. They didn't answer it, which really annoyed me because they didn't answer any of the questions that people typed in.
Oh.
The moderator did their own questions.
Oh.
And it was pretty obvious that they were very much in favor of just the pharmaceutical approach to helping us age longer. And the question I had was, how many centenarians have taken these drugs that you are saying promote aging? Because I guarantee if you go and you talk to any of these people like Beth,
no.
They probably did not take any, and none of them were conscious about, well, I do this particular biohack, or, I did this and that caused me to live longer. And I actually, I used to like Dr. Peter Attia. I always mispronounce his name. But I'm liking him less and less because he just tends to be hopping on to these pharmaceutical approaches to aging. And I heard him in an interview recently where he said, basically people that live to be 100 are just lucky.
I don't think that's true.
I don't either.
No, I don't. Not at all. And the other thing about pharmaceuticals irritates me is that, we lose muscle mass as we get older. Beth is she weighs about the same as the average 11-year-old. But when she gets an infection or a virus, a respiratory virus, they give her the same medication they would give a 200-pound man. And it's not, it makes her she doesn't want to take anything because whatever they give her is it's wrong for her. But they don't seem to have, you have child and you have adult, but adult can be anybody from, 25 to 105 and your body weight changes, all kinds of things change. So I would like to see the pharmaceutical industry start looking at body weight for medication instead of age. Age, I think. And
even look at body weight correctly. We hear about BMI. You can get me off on all kind of tangents, and we're here to talk about your book. But BMI to me is just ridiculous because, like you said, she's lost weight, but very likely she's still, just picturing what she looks like, and I have to go on the webpage and kind of see if we have pictures.
She still walks a couple kilometers a day. She still does posture exercise. She has the best posture. Posture exercises. She can't use her hands very well anymore because of a ridiculous accident. They put up her dental chair too quickly, and she was thrown right off the chair because she's light. And she suffered whiplash, and it damaged very well. So some hand exercises. But she's still very aware that as long as she's alive, she's going to do what she can to make sure she's alive and well, not just alive.
Right. And that kind of brings me to my next question. You both discussed countering with strength, the inevitable weakening of the body. Right. What does that mean in practical everyday life for those of us that are trying to age well?
Well, I think it's both mental and physical. You do what you can physically as you get older. But I think the more fundamental component is to have a positive. Okay, so you can't bench press, and you can stand straight against a wall with your shoulders and your buttocks and your head and your heels all against the wall for 15 minutes to help strength. Well, do that, right? And do whatever you can. Don't give in to it. That's a downward spiral. The less you do, the less you're able to.
And like you said, that's not just physical. It fits what we call the SPIES model, the spiritual, physical, intellectual, emotional, and social. We can always work on strengthening those 5 different categories.
I think that's it's certainly true with Beth.
She's the epitome of all of these things. We should have to change our logo to her picture.
I think so.
So many people, fear loneliness later in life. And, especially as a male, I think it's a lot harder for us to, once we leave the workforce, to maintain some of the friendships. And I talked to a friend recently when I was in Colorado who retired about 5 years ago. And I think he realized that all those relationships at work really were shallow relationships. They weren't really friends because as soon as you leave the workforce, these guys aren't reaching out to you. They're not staying connected with you. And so maintaining friendships gets a lot more challenging. But your story really shows that the sustaining power of friendships. And we've been talking about that. So what did your weekly walks teach you about connection as we age?
Well, I I've always known in some part of my brain but writing is a solitary activity, and so is reading, and those are my two favorite activities. So it's Beth is amazing at that. I think as you go through life, when you're in public school, your friends are the people that you are in your class. When you go to university, it's the same thing. When you're a young parent, your friends are the parents of the children that your kids play with. So and then as you deepen into your career, your friends are from the office. All those friendships are circumstantial. They aren't necessarily built on shared values or shared interests or even provocative interests and values, right? Which is, Beth and I don't agree on everything, which I think the way a good friend. And she works really hard at it. She has, not that it's a slog, but she welcomes friends into her life. Even now, welcomes new friends into her life. And they are friends of all ages, relatively young people to, there aren't many in her cohort left, for sure. That's the worst thing about growing old is, even at 75, my friends are, dropping off the planet one by one. And once you get to be in your 90s, there aren't a lot of people of your vintage. And boy, at 105, pretty much nobody of your vintage. Yeah. So you can't rely on a friendship built on the shared experience of the world that you need to be open to the world as it is evolving and be making people of all. I think that's a big alive mentally.
So if somebody listening today is in their 60s or 70s and wondering how to stay physically, mentally, and socially engaged for decades to come, what lessons from Beth's life would you pass on?
Well, I am reluctant to, and I don't mean to be self-serving when I say that I hope people will read the book because everybody will take some. I always say that a book is because it's that books are this marvelous place where the writer and the reader meet and ideas. And I'm often shocked at what people take away from books. It's not at all what I thought I was doing, right? So I don't think that I can. There's nothing prescriptive in the book. It's more like meeting somebody and seeing that they can be a positive model. And I think Beth's, her passions, all of those things provide a great model for well-might for.
That's a really, really good answer to that question. I love the fact that, you're not trying to be, there's a series of bullet points. Chapter 1, we'll talk about how Beth exercised. In chapter 2, we're going to talk about her, how becoming a vegetarian made her, so much healthier.
These things slip out the way they slip out in conversation. The book is made up of, 90 some very short pieces, and themes come in and out in the course of the book in the same way they do in a conversation with. And so I think from the feedback that I'm already getting is that people come away with it with a feeling of confidence and positivity towards moving through those latter decades.
I love that from kind of any book that's written on aging, when it's something that will get people more introspective and look at, how can my life be better? How can I use my life, my existence to better somebody else's life? Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm kind of seeing is the engagement in this book is that both of you have added quality to one another's lives, mm-hmm. and you have benefited from one another's lives. And now in turning this into a book, it allows all of us to benefit from that experience as well. And, you said that a book is not complete until somebody has read it. I would probably further that even further and say that a book isn't complete until somebody shares their interpretation or their understanding of that book with somebody else. Where we actually sit around and say, I read this book. This was fantastic. Oh, you read it too. What did you gain from it?
Yeah, I think and it was such a pleasure to write. And yesterday or the day before when we did the launch, seeing, several hundred people in the room, and all of them, the energy and the positive feeling was just so powerful that I think Beth and I did the right thing by putting this.
Yeah. I think it's got to give us a certain level of hope in this world too, because we're in a really messed up state globally right now. I'm in the United States. It's horrible here, but I know you all in Canada are feeling the repercussions of kind of just the divisiveness and the friction, the tension in this country. But, when you look at, Beth said 105 years, how much friction and tension has she gone through
She
and
lived through
grown
war,
from?
right? She lived through the Great Depression. She lived through, she has a way of looking at it that I think is really valuable. When I talked to some younger people, and one of the things that was that they said, I always thought that our generation had it the hardest, and the truth is every generation, right?
Yeah.
And so when you start to see the rhythms of history too in some of our conversations, how fascists come and go, authoritarianism comes and goes, and I don't find it as hard to as easy to be discouraged, because it's part of a cycle, and it's pretty nasty right now. But I'm going to keep taking my Tylenol, and it will come out of this.
As Nietzsche said, that which does not kill us makes us stronger, right?
Right. Well, and I do believe that a bit.
I do think we need to go through certain cycles of tension and release in order to grow. I'm a physiologist, and if I talk exercise, you're not going to grow unless you stress your body.
Yeah.
But you also have to give yourself some time to recover from that, and you have to do the right things in order to facilitate that growth. But we're going to grow out of this. I wholeheartedly believe that. I'm probably more hopeful than most Americans right now.
Yeah.
Because I know this tension is going to push us into something greater. Yeah. I think of it as a spiritual evolution, but that's a whole nother story. But
well, and after all, you live in Portland, which is a wonderful place.
But I would contend too that there's a certain level of I'm jealous of your ability to get into such a deep relationship with somebody like Beth, because having moved here from more the West Coast or East Coast, I've found it a lot harder to find those deeper relationships. I find a lot more people to be very superficial, people to be what we call Oregon nice here, where they'll act nice to you, but that under the core of that smile, they're really they're not happy with you or whatever. They're not honest. Like back east, I got some friends. I love my friends from New York, and those are some of my closest bonds that I can still pick up the phone today. I haven't seen one of them in a decade, and it'd be like we just talked yesterday. But they're going to be honest with me, and they're pushing me to become a better person, and not just kind of let's just be friendly on the surface, because if we go any deeper, we might hit a nerve that we don't want to hit.
Well, the thing is that friendship takes time. Mm-hmm. You have to spend time with, Beth and I, and that creates a deeper understanding of each other, and a deeper tolerance, and all, no two people are concurrent on every single topic, right? And so friendship does require generosity and openness, all of that. And I think especially men are used to more physical friendship. My husband, his friendships were all around. He played baseball and hockey and squash and all those things, and those were his friends. But then as he grew older and gave up, kind of the group sports, those friendships didn't last, because they're circumstances. So it takes a while, and it takes work, and maybe older people aren't to do that.
Yeah, I think we tend to make our friendships more transactional as opposed to transformational.
And that's a huge. Yeah.
So what surprised you about your own outlook on aging after these years of walking with Beth?
I think I'm more accepting of myself than I was. I'm also more relaxed, It is what it is. There's really not, my sphere of control is me. And, I have a bunch of stuff wrong with me. And, a lot of it isn't stuff, it's stuff that can be managed. And so you learn to accept it and still keep positive, but don't stop doing anything, as long as you can do it, you can do it. So that's a truism. But
I like that idea of focusing on your personal sphere of control.
Yeah. So, and make the most of it. For a while I was really bothered. I took very, very high doses of cortisone for 2 years. So I had this great big moon face, right, that you get. And then when the moon face, as I was weaning off and the moon face started to shrink, when I saw the first wrinkles around my eyes, I thought, oh, yay, I've got wrinkles. I don't have the moon face. But then now I look like a like a collapsed balloon. But that's okay too. It is what it is.
You look fine. Yeah. And those wrinkles that we get, those are just part of our vintage,
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah.
I know there's certain people out there that are spending millions of dollars a year to try and avoid those wrinkles. And to me, that's not aging well.
Well, okay, so I would have agreed before my comment. So I said something similar to Beth because in Mexico's a big, destination for having, and especially where I live, there's a lot of cosmetic surgeons, and I have to say a lot of the results are not, but. So I was saying something like that to Beth, and she went very quiet, which I always know she's thinking. So whatever it takes, if that's what it takes to get you through these years, which are not easy, then that's fine. You do whatever. So I think I've become less judgmental.
And she's 105, so I got to listen to her.
Yeah, we do.
Not all. Who am I at 62 to talk about aging well when you can get advice from somebody that's 105?
Yeah, so. You got another 43 years to go there, Jeff.
Yeah. So we'll see how I'm doing when I'm 105.
Yeah, I think I'll be below ground. But anyway, who knows?
Let's be optimistic. Eh?
Yeah. Well, and I don't mind living long, but I want to live well. If I'm not living well, then I hope.
Yeah. I mean, what's the saying? Live as young for as long as you can. So speaking of, and this is the question I ask of all my guests. So what are you doing personally to age well?
Oh, working way too hard. What am I doing? Well, one of the things I do is I go to Mexico because I have arthritis, osteoporosis. And this climate where I live, which is at sea level and a wet climate, is at the junction of the Great Lakes and a major river. It's so humid here. This is not a healthy place for me. And so I live at least 6 months, between 6 and 8 months of the year, in a place that is healthy for me. And it took a while for me to make that decision to do that for me, because I step off the plane in Mexico and I lose 10 years away from me because I could, fingers can move without hurting, feet, and my legs aren't swelling up and all that stuff. So I think I'm more inclined to make decisions for myself after a lifetime of I'm making decisions for my own well-being. And I think I still eat too much.
Can you eat too much? Depends on what kind of chocolate you're eating. You eat dark chocolate?
It's totally dark, no sugar. Yeah.
I don't think you can eat. Well, you can eat too much, but it's better than eating just, bars and bars of Hershey bars or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
I love dark chocolate.
Yeah, me too.
I've gotten my son hooked on. He's only 20 and he loves dark chocolate, but it's the most expensive chocolate. So, you have a 20-year-old kid and they like to eat junk food, but they're eating healthy junk food. It costs us a lot of money. But
yeah, but it's and I don't drink coffee or tea, but I drink hot chocolate, which is just really dark cocoa, and water. Yeah, it's really.
It sounds good. So where can our listeners and viewers find Walking with Beth? You said today is the official launch date. This will actually air a little bit later than that, but where can they find the book? And follow your work. I mean, you mentioned the webpage, so let's just kind of reiterate that so that people can have something directly to go to as soon as they finish on this podcast today.
Yeah, so Merilyn Simonds, you go there, you'll see individual pages for all of my books. Cruise around, see what you like. And Walking with Beth is only in Canada, but you can buy it on Amazon. If you go to amazon.ca, you can buy it there and they'll ship it.
I didn't even realize there was an Amazon CA. I thought
oh my God, there's Amazon CA, there's Amazon Com, there's Amazon UK, Amazon MX, there's Amazon for but they're all different.
I did not know that. It's my United States centric belief that just American companies are all here. Right?
I know. It's the problem for the big eye opener that Americans they have thought of them.
I'll have to consider it. And we promote the books that we have the authors on here, and I generally put the Amazon link on it, but I'm always assuming, and most of them are sold in the U.S., so I assume that people even in Australia or something like that can still get access to
Amazon.au.
But I mean, they can still go on to the American one, right, and buy books that are published or sold here.
Yes, that's right. And if there are any publishers listening out there, the American right, who knows?
Well,
Maybe it'll be published in the States eventually.
I hope so. So we do have some followers of this podcast that are in publishing, so maybe they'll pick up on it.
There you go.
We'll work on that. So if Beth were here today, what is one piece of advice do you think she would want to leave with our listeners and viewers? I know you're speaking for her.
I think she would say, find your passion, whatever it is, find the thing that it makes you move out of yourself and at the same time deeper into, that sparks an all-absorbing so that you don't become too obsessed with. It also solves loneliness. It solves all kinds. It solves overeating. Solves everything. So
sounds like a summary of the Aging Well podcast. So.
Yeah.
Was there anything we didn't discuss today that you want to make sure that the viewers and listeners get to hear about your work? I feel like, we talk about Beth a lot, but, you need to share about kind of your life journey and how you are aging well. So.
Well, I grew up in a family. We moved to Brazil from Canada. And those years in Brazil were hugely on who I became. Opened me to other cultures. There were very few English people in the city where we lived. And so I learned Portuguese right away. And I hired myself out as an interpreter for the American women that came down there. So I go shopping with. But I think it opened me to language, and I find the same thing in Mexico. And what I like about that opening is that it makes you realize that not all the United States and Canada share many, many values. Some of them less attractive than others, and ageism. But you go to Mexico. In Mexico, they love and respect and adore old. I when I was really, really ill and I couldn't really walk, my husband took to a grocery store, and I said, okay, I'm going to head for that PC counter, and he was going to go up and get coffee. I was pretty sure I could get, but I used to fall over sideways. And anyway, I fell over into this big display of olive oil, and Mexicans ran from all over the store, especially young people. So concerned and picking me up and taking me, and I wasn't injured, and none of the olive oil spilled. You can't trip there without 5 people coming and wanting to help. They grow up in households with 3-4 generations living in this, and they have such a respect for people. It's amazing. So I think for me, that's a huge shaping experience. I've always had old women in my life. I've always enjoyed talking to older people. And I think in part that was by being that valued.
So how do we change the culture here in the U.S. and Canada?
I don't think we can start from that point. I think we have to change. And, it's just like sexism. I remember the moment when somebody caught me up in a magazine article for always using the masculine. And after that, I became aware of masculine pronouns and feminine pronouns and balance. So it's those aha moments that you need to come to, I think. We need to change ourselves, and then the people around us will change how they speak. We need to call people out. I call my doctors out when they try to infantilize me, and they don't even know they're doing it, right? And so I think we have to be proactive as individuals. Culture changes slowly. It's like trying to turn an ocean liner, right?
Right.
It's a slow process. But we know what happens,
Mm-hmm.
Women are seen in a better light now, or let's hope it lasts. And, likewise, people of color, we've come a long way. We still have a long way to go, but we have come a long way. And I think we need to start making that kind of progress with ageism. All the isms, bad.
Yeah. Just eradicate the isms.
Yeah.
Are there any good isms?
Well, there's
got to be some.
There are schisms. I don't know if that's one either.
Yeah, I don't know. But this has just been a fascinating conversation. I've just enjoyed the time we've spent today. It makes me want to meet Beth. But we'll definitely be sharing the book and enjoying that book. And just want to let you know that I appreciate you, and just keep doing what you're doing and keep aging well. And thank Beth.
Thank you. And I'll say hello to Beth.
Thank you for listening. I hope you benefited from today's podcast. And until next time, keep aging well.